to yap some more. I should have turned it on for the Whitebird mountain climb, but I'll do that on the way back. But here we are again, IRL. Just have more that I need to say. You know what I wish would happen? So drive with me. We're driving from Boise to Moscow right now. Grow Kick brand, increasing life. What up? Hey, did this come back online? Anyway, so here we are, IRL stream driving from Boise to Moscow with my multi-camera setup, Boise, Idaho to Moscow, Idaho. I had someone earlier think I was talking about Moscow, Russia. That would be quite the drive. I don't know how I would do that, but that would be quite the drive. Anyway, so Grow Kick brand, I made that Celtic knot combining a heart and an up arrow representing increasing life. And I was thinking about it. If there are any public figures that I would say uh, that comment on politics that are in favor of the concept of increasing life universally, at least rhetorically, I probably like Lex Friedman, for example. At least rhetorically, he's just saying, whatever solution we come to, I hope it results in more love and peace and light and happiness and learning. You know, that's Lex Friedman's like on point brand. I like that. Maybe I should just chirp at him every day until I get his attention or something. But then humorously, probably like Theo Vaughn. I mean, yeah, he weighs in politically, he interviews a lot of political people, but I feel like after he does like I mean, he's inexperienced politically, right? So we'll see if this continues to hold true. But instead of being bitter and jaded about stuff, he'll say what he wants to say, and then he tries like looping back around. He can get kind of dark. But anyway, like I just listened to. Obviously, I talk about how I listened to uh, Dave Smith and no, I'm sorry, I listened to Ted Cruz and Tucker Carlson's debate yesterday. I'm eagerly awaiting Constantine Kissin and Dave Smith's debate moderated by Piers Morgan. I'm eagerly awaiting for that. That's going to be great. And I just listened to Dave Smith's podcast, Part of the Problem. The one thing I'll say about Dave Smith is I like him. I think he's a talented public speaker. I've never, checked out his comedy, but I will say he seems very comfortable being negative, as I was talking about earlier, and like Scott Adams was saying the other day, the universe doesn't care if your sentiment is positive or negative. It doesn't recognize the polarity of your intent. So if Dave Smith has a podcast called Part of the Problem, I mean, you're just being problematic. You're just shouting to the universe, there's a problem, and you're perpetuating the problem. So my critique of him would be, I'm not sure. Like he just called for the impeachment of Trump and he condemned Trump, and I think he's been consistent as long as I've been listening to him. You know, he wants the U.S. out of foreign wars, and he has a disdain for warmongers who he perceives to be warmongers. I think he's been consistent, honestly, and the one thing about it though is he seems like a really nice guy. Honestly, I think it is just his brand to call people out. But it's a quick way to get eyes, and I'm not accusing him of doing this because I think he comes across as being genuine. I think Dave Smith comes across as being among the most genuine people in public discourse right now, in my opinion, as far as characters are concerned. As far as just speaking his mind, come what may. But I think that it definitely serves his brand well to get greater virality to cause controversy. But that's true in really any industry. So I would like, if I had a chance, I would like to debate Dave Smith on the principle of negativity itself as a mechanism for progress. Because I would postulate that negativity and criticism and contention does not move the needle in any productive or effective way. I don't think calling out something, hey, we're reconnected. I don't know if any of what I just said got lost, so maybe I'll just repeat myself briefly. I just listened to Dave Smith calling out Ben Shapiro. I listened to Ben Shapiro yesterday calling out Dave Smith. I listened to Tucker Carlson, Ted Cruz yesterday debate. I'm looking forward to Konstantin Kisin and Dave Smith debate today, moderated by Piers Morgan once that gets released. I think Dave Smith seems like a very, very genuine person, and he strikes me as being honest to the information that he has. I've never seen his comedy. I don't know if it's any good. I assume that it is. He seems like a very talented communicator. And the one thing I'll say though is there's some research that I can't cite. I'll have to look it up, but it's been referenced a few times in like some business journals I've read, and a few books that I've read. A few authors have referenced this deep dive someone did into the culture of companies and even marriages, that they are trending towards dissolution as an institution when the ratio of positive to negative communications drops below 5 to 1. So if there are less than 5 to 1 positive to negative communications in general, then that institution is trending towards dissolution. So when we talk about civility in public discourse and dialogue, and what bleeds leads, what is controversial gets pushed algorithmically, I wish that we could lovingly and gently and firmly call out in our dialogue anyone who spews or throws the kitchen sink or a word salad of negativity about any entity, especially that's not directly, who's not a party to the conversation. It's just unproductive, perhaps, and not fair. We ought to call that out personally. I'm calling out people like Dave Smith right now, but he's not. It's not unique to him. He's just on my mind because I just listened to his podcast, Part of the Problem, the episode that he dropped yesterday. I think it dropped yesterday or today. But he's calling out Ben Shapiro, whatever. I'm not singling out Dave Smith. It's just he's on my mind because I just listened to his podcast. But here's something interesting. First of all, I don't like his podcast name, Part of the Problem, because it just perpetuates problems, because the subject of it, the title itself, is a problem. And I think taking this ratio of 5 to 1 positive to negative communication interactions, think of it as a communication transaction. That's how I understand it. Feedback. I think we ought to call people out if they're throwing a word salad of negativity about an entity that's not a party to the conversation and doesn't have a chance to defend itself. We either need to get really good at steelman to defend their position in their absence, or even better, try to get someone there who can speak on behalf of that entity. Good luck doing that. Built on just and feedback, scams or calling out this. I mean, look at the popularity of, probably the most heinous example of this is the popularity of true crime, right? People love to hear such terrible, horrific, tragic stories, and it's a real itch that we want scratched. But knowing that organizations that have a less one ratio of positive to negative communication transactions, I think it is incumbent upon us to call out negative words approach, attack anyone using an ad hominem fallacy or a straw man argument. You just lovingly, gently, carefully, diplomatically, just say, hey, but just so you know, nothing will improve, or it's unlikely to improve when we spread negativity. And what I'm what I'm putting forth right now is I have an interest in not true crime. I've never had a real affinity or an interest in true crime content. It's something to me, but affinity for I don't know. I'm probably gonna get pulled over right now. I don't know what the speed limit is, so I'm gonna drive 35 miles an hour as I get towards this cop here. But they're probably gonna pull me over for going too slow. I do not see a speed limit. So if you gonna say, look, officer, I didn't see a speed limit. They don't. Again, you get what you focus on. So if I focus on not being pulled over every day, I'm gonna get pulled over more often. Anyway, I think it falls upon us to call people out when they're using too much negativity and say, hey, look, I know you probably mean well, and maybe it makes you feel good or something to out, but we need to imbue more positive in our constructive dialogue, right? So it's like I hear people on the right disparage and call out people on the left. I don't tend to listen to leaning media at all, like at all. I guess Joe Rogan would be considered like a moderate centrist in a sense. I just don't listen to left leaning media. It's too frustrating for me because I have so much I disagree with them. It's difficult, and I often disagree with right leaning media, but I just don't enjoy listening to left leaning media. But what it does teach the few times I've listened to it is, oh, these left leaning people sound the exact same as the right leaning people, just with a flipped argument. So, that should be obvious, but the rhetoric of, okay, these left people are straw manning right people, and so I think it's fair to consider that right leaning people are straw manning left leaning people. And sure enough, I started observing that people on the right, when they straw man someone's argument, you do a little shallow peek into it, and there are obvious ways to steel man that same argument. But people don't like to steel man. Either it's unproductive or it's just lazy or it doesn't get clicks, doesn't get eyes. Unity is quite boring. Unity is quite boring. Everybody loves a fight. That's why if a fight breaks out, everybody circles up. They want to see it. Oh, this is crazy. Pull out my camera. I'm going to record this. So that's why I said on the very first stream that I did, this Grow Kick brand is probably going to be the most boring community ever. But we're doing it because it's our duty to actually move the needle. And here's what I mean by this. Everything that we talked about earlier about the science of getting rich, the New Thought movement, AJ, Y Files, Synchronicity episode that dropped yesterday, installment. I said on my first stream too that when people started advocating for censorship, I had a different perspective on that. I didn't view it as trying to limit my freedom. I asked the question, why do people who are in favor of censorship find the sharing of certain information to be so dangerous? What do these people know about the influenceability? That's not a good, I don't think that's a word. What do these people know about how easy it is to actually stir people up to action, violence, contention, anger? What do these people know about the power of rhetoric that I don't? Why are they so scared of ideas? What do they know about the power of words that I don't fully appreciate? Because I view their attempts to censor people, I view their attempts at censorship as a restriction on my freedom. But what do they understand about the power of the ability to influence people that I don't understand? And then it's like it starts to get a little bit conspiratorial because it's like maybe they have such a fear of an idea catching fire like a wildfire because they've had experience in such matters. Maybe the people who advocate for censorship have been pushing a narrative that caught on so well and worked so well that as soon as they see a narrative that they're like, ooh, this could lead to bad places if it spreads, they want to cull it. They feel like they have a responsibility to stamp it out. So that was kind of my question: is what do these people understand about the danger of ideas that I don't fully appreciate, or how people can be? So that's an example of steel manning in favor of censorship. And the people who say free speech absolutist, free speech absolutism, I love that. I'm more closely, but the group that how easily people are influenced, coincidentally, a lot of the people that were advocating for that revolved quickly around which social media, full of influencers, if anyone knows how easily people are influenced, it's the ones that design the algorithms that influence the masses and their perception and the narrative. So that's part of, Scott Adams says something like, what, 95% of our opinions are assigned to us? Maybe he thinks all of our opinions are assigned to us. Fully accept. And that's why so much of our contention is unproductive because both parties are arguing against the worst aspect of their opponent, in which most people will agree with, and most people will also agree with defending the best aspects of the opponents. This false dichotomy where I'm making fun of your ugly shoes, you're making fun of my ugly shirt, but you have really and I have really nice hair. That was about the worst example that I could ever give. But the point is, I think if people just boycott hate, that's what we need. We need to boycott hate and violence, but don't throw an anti-war protest. Don't throw an anti-hate because you're going to perpetuate more war and more hate. We need to perpetuate and promote peace. That's the sum of the matter. See love. We got to vehemently and promote those principles. That's why when I look at public dialogue and discourse, I'm going to do better to steelman and infuse in the dialogue. I know there are messed up people out there in the world, but I still advocate it's not so much the people that are messed up, but the ideas that they might hold true, which is a result of some sort of a lot. I mean, there are so many amazing on X, but isn't it interesting to think about propaganda and going off of what AJ on the White Files was saying about thought movement and whatever the mind can conceive and believe it can achieve, and the idea of be first and then do and then have rather than have do. These principles that I've been discussing as far as what you focus on, you create. The malleable nature of reality. Isn't it interesting? We now think of propaganda, of imagine that the real power of the city state actors is that whatever unified narrative is created. Imagine the nation's population with intent create. We're dealing with a ideas and messaging, and when people are divided unproductively, there's no time for them to create in unity. That's why perhaps there's so much power in mind control and in super harsh narratives. Is difficult in a sort of free marketplace where so many ideas persist and thrive. It's scary because the central planners cannot necessarily control the output. And that's what's frustrating because they've been controlling the input to have a rather confident position on the projected output. But now their inputs are being diluted. The messaging is being quote unquote corrupted and being infused with wonderful ideas. And it's becoming easier and easier to view hypocrisy. But the ultimate problem is, though, I'm not in favor of silencing dissidents, and what people like Dave Smith do are important because they are offering counter narratives, and we no longer have to accept the programmed input. And I think powers that be are terrified because they can't accurately predict the output anymore. They don't know what we will create because they don't know what we're thinking about. Now, this puts an even darker turn on things like the hackability of Neuralink or the fact that our opinions are assigned to us. Because maybe if we want to go all matrixy, where they were taught connecting humans to use their power, their brain power, like batteries, if they can plant what we visualize, then we can create perhaps from the reality we visualize. Someone was talking about, I think it was Danny Jones talking about, was it Danny Jones? Somebody interviewed Dr. Ben Carson. I think it was Danny Jones. No, who was it? Someone was interviewing someone about neuroplasticity or something. I'll remember it. Someone was interviewing someone about Neuralink and stuff, and they said that they also talked to Dr. Ben Carson about it and how you can simulate smell, touch, all the senses, including sight. You can simulate and stimulate to create literally real perceived experiences. Which, what's more powerful when you're talking about using your vision to create? Which is interesting to think about. Where there's no vision, the people perish. Maybe if we use AI and Neuralink to substitute our vision, that's really interesting because how like it says like in Revelation something like has the mark of the beast. And I was thinking about how with AI, it's like perhaps the part of humans that it can't fully replicate is that sort of ESP, extrasensory perception. Thinking about, imagine someone who it's already being shown that people, well, I saw a pop up on shows some sort of reasoning decline in people who rely too much on LLMs. Already they're seeing some sort of outsourcing of critical thinking and reasoning and rationalizing in a sense to people who use these tools on a frequent basis. They've seen a decline, which makes sense. You don't exercise a muscle, you lose it, right? Or it atrophies. So imagine that can be done even to the extent of someone's spirit. If a spirit can be degraded such that like there's nothing, maybe you can make a case that the reason why no one who has the mark of the beast is going to be saved is literally they're actually dead. Like there's go. Like they're actually just like fleshy androids or whatever, just walking around. Anyway, it's just interesting to think about. All right, that was the paper mill back there on the left. Hey, what if someone can programmatically insert these ideas? I mean, they can't have it both ways because it'll either work or it won't. I wonder if an idea, our only power is choosing which ideas we want to accept, taken away, then what is the substance of soul and being? We will start failing our own Turing test. All of a sudden, humans won't even be able to pass their own Turing test. They won't be able to think for themselves and use their agency at all. Interesting. A planted idea for creation has the same power an idea that was seemingly and deliberately built or created by the person leaning into certain ideas or promptings. Wow, that's crazy. Imagine this. Christian community, members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, my faith, such a strong emphasis on the Holy Ghost, and we talk about the promptings of the Holy Ghost. A correlation between an LLM prompt and a prompting from the Holy Ghost. But that's really, if we do believe, which our doctrine says, that we cannot act for ourselves, it's just a matter of which enticing are we going to. It really becomes, if you're going to call it a prompting, if you define prompting, which makes sense, you're really saying, what firmware am I going to flash today? I have all these requests to flash this firmware to my fleshware. What input will I? What am I going to choose to load onto this hard drive of my mind? To load onto this of my person. So it's interesting. I've never drawn a correlation between Ghost and an LLM prompt. That's a fascinating thought. So anyway, trying to destroy good things is happy when there is division and contention and lack of unified creation. It's interesting to think of like the American Revolutionary War. People cannot act for themselves save they're enticed by the one or the other. How does that work en masse? When you look at a building that's constructed and you know could have done that, then where did the collective, how is it created? They tap into? You look at the buildings in New York or any other big metro area, like not one person could have built this. So how do the collective promptings take place? And could it be true that as a collective you can't take action unless you're enticed by the one or the other? That's why it's so concerning that so many of us are just coasting through life on default, just taking requests from the promptings that come into us, but not necessarily being proactive to get out there and maybe identify new sources of prompting or improve our ability to receive promptings from other input sources. It's so easy to drown out the voice that's requesting your attention by participating in activities that will dull and deaden our spirits. Definitely desensitize our spirits. Like, you're not going to necessarily get a nudge from the universe while you're tripping out listening to, dubstep at a rave or something. Like, I don't know, that's just an example. Or on speed at a rave. Or any of the vices. I mean, like, the major vices are drugs, money, sex, power. Not even really money, because what people are drawn to is money is the storage of value, is what you can accomplish with it. So I would just say overlook money. What people want is power, sex, or maybe drugs, like those types of experiences. I don't know. Just a thought. So if we're not doing what we can to increase our sensitivity to recognize and identify what we're being enticed or pulled or prompted to do, then we really are surrendering a lot of our control and we're just coasting on default. We are subconsciously floating through life, just accepting whatever's handed out to us, where we could take the reins and create together. So if you want to think of it like a think tank, call it a creation tank, or maybe that's why we're judged on thoughts. It says in Mosiah 4:30, I think, watch your thoughts. You're going to be judged on your thoughts. Because I think who was it? I think it was Joe Rogan again, talking about how he thinks thoughts have substance. And that would make sense, because if you're judged on your thoughts, then you are metaphysically taking action with every thought. And with every thought that you allow to persist and exist is an action for which you could and should be judged. So thoughts have real power, and nothing exists except it was a thought first. And scripturally, we believe that. It says in the scriptures that everything spiritually before he created it physically. And again, when I sort scriptures, again, I'm working from the lexicon and canon of the Church of Jesus. That scripture that says the Lord doesn't create anything physically that hasn't already been created spiritually by him. That could be in the Doctrine and Covenants, could be in the Bible, or be in the Book of Mormon. I don't know. I don't know from my head. But it says he created everything spiritually before he created it physically. Anyway, public figures that got to get some sort of a idea that when you're being positive and generous with your perspective, that's it's about the bravest thing you could do, because taking cheap shots is easy, but it takes real effort to create and observe or compete. Case as a way of life, commentary, discourse, dialogue, whatever, are going to basically be left to consume whatever, because they won't necessarily play a role themselves. It's just interesting, right? Think of mind over. I've thought for a long time, that, like, if you take what Y-Files was saying, city, I've long been impressed with the miracles that Jesus performed because as a Christian and as someone who enjoys philosophy and is a student perhaps of public dialogue, consuming mainstream podcasts like Joe Rogan and such, when you hear the miracles of Jesus, you can either discount them as lore, or you can say what Tucker Carlson famously likes to say, what is that? That's what he says. He says, what is that? That's what Tucker Carlson likes to say. So you can hear about the miracles of Jesus, raising the dead, healing the sick, causing the blind to see, the deaf to hear, healing the cripple's wrist, and fasting for 40 days, holding fish to pay his tax, seeing the 5,000, walking on water, obviously culminating in the infinite atonement where he took upon himself sin and death and overcame and broke the bands of sin and death and the barrier that it for us to be redeemed by Jesus and through him overcoming those barriers. If we have a broken heart and a contrite spirit, this is the thing that people don't understand. Faith and works, or grace and works, is very unproductive and is easy to identify as section by Satan, because whether we're saved by the grace of Christ or we're saved by our own works, which we're not, that's a misnomer. We're saved by our own works, but our works manifest the sincerity of our hearts. So all we can do is choose to follow Christ, because we can't even do anything on our own, save we're enticed by the one or the other. But if we're working, it shows we're not following the right spirit. And how can we claim to, if we're working evil works? Christ wouldn't lead us. So that's maybe a better answer to the works versus grace argument. Is actually, it's impossible for us to work works even, actually. Doctrinally, we believe it's impossible for us to work works. It says it right in 2 Nephi 2:16. Man for himself. Period, full stop. Saved he were enticed by the one or the other. So it's actually simple. Someone who's not living by the teachings of Christ is not following Christ. He's not choosing to follow Christ. Now, we all make mistakes, obviously, and you have to use the atonement of Jesus Christ to cast those mistakes and those burdens on the Lord, who is mighty to save. But when I hear about the miracles of Jesus, you either have to confront those, dismiss them, or that. What is that? Changing water to wine. What is that? Feeding the fire. And how is it that Christ was able to do these things? But not only Christ, his followers. Peter walked to him, and when he took the figure and instead looked at doubts entered his mind, and he fell. Doubt is antagonist with our faith in Christ as the of this story. So in my opinion, Christ worked these miracles because of his incredible received through his sacrificing. I'm out here on a limb. The point is, he had such great faith that when he imagined something, he created it. Matter would align to his will. I don't think Christ knew or cared or would have cared about Our molecular definition of water is dihydrogen oxygen. I don't think he would have cared. I think when you have the power of Christ, that reality is a black box like an LLM. You put in an input, you get an output. What's happening under the hood doesn't really matter, in my opinion. Knowing that water is H2O is great because they are observations by mankind, by humankind, to theorize and explain natural phenomena. But when you rely on that explanation and that theory, which interprets reality, and you use it to predict reality, well, as soon as you're met with a character like Christ that turns it all on its head and says, "No, sorry, your observations are reactive. You tell me it's impossible that this water could turn into wine. Well, then how are you going to make a theory to explain how I did it?" So you either have to say, as a person who respects science and is a Christian, you either have to say the miracles of Jesus are wrong, or he actually did it, and we just don't understand it yet. So that's what I choose, because I try to maintain a high degree of openness. I'm like, okay, I believe in Jesus as my Lord and Savior and Redeemer, and I believe the stories about him, and is evidenced through like the restoration through the gospel of Jesus Christ, from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to the prophet Joseph Smith, the first vision, all the miracles done in this last dispensation. And if anyone's curious, look up like miracles with the pioneers who went over to Utah, or just look up miracles in the early restored Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I mean, there's so many stories of miracles being performed. It's like you either have to just dismiss that, or you have to just say, what is that? So perhaps Jesus was the most perfect and power. Or you have to just say, what is that? So perhaps Jesus was the embodiment of mind over matter, and the elements bending and changing to his will, creation through thought. Jesus says, hey, this is wine. I need this water to be wine. Hey, I need there to be a coin in this fish. Right? That one's, if you think of all of his miracles that are documented, one to me is like the funnest because it's the goofiest, and it was used to pay a tax or a fine or a fee that they had to pay. One of my favorite stories, because it's like, it's also indicative of like Jesus's sermons, like consider the lilies of the field, neither do they spin, yet Solomon in all his glory one of these. Or the story of the widow's mite. Like, God doesn't need our money. He can pull the fish. It's not, he's able to do, he doesn't need us. But he's given us an opportunity to him and worship him, which is very humbling. So I'm on a rant here, but it occurred to me when, like, if I was in China, let's say infiltration and propaganda, we'll call it just marketing, because that's really what it is. It's marketing. Demand for your product, and sales is actually transacting and selling the product. So propaganda is just marketing. That's all it is. You're just creating a demand for your action, or a demand for is more powerful instead of swooping in. So what do? A house, your neighbor's got a house. You want your neighbor's house, so that's a sin because you're coveting it. Let's just say you have imperial ambitions there, and take your neighbor's house by force, but you might fail. It's too risky. If you fail, you're gone and your empire's over. What makes the most sense is if you can market to your neighbor to create a demand for your offering such that your neighbor wants you to come to the house and hands you the keys. That's, you're not risking yourself. Still, perhaps, but when you look at the surface and the output of it, somebody is trying to divide us and take the house. Some demand for their products, and if they can't persuade us in their direction, at a minimum, us from creating and progressing to outpace them. If you want to say, think of it as an arms race. Tries to outsource to have a unified message to create because I don't trust person to have the power to create the unified. Are 3, 5, 8, 10 things out there, messages to compete for. I'm going to judge them all by what results in increasing life. More life to all, less to none, because that's what harmony with the universe. And you get peace through strength. And I still don't know where I sit on the fence with that because it's like, oh, everybody else has guns. I need to go get my gun to be bigger than everyone else's gun. Otherwise, I'm at a disadvantage. And it's like, yeah, but I can't help but think we have the wrong assumption. I think we have the wrong set of assumptions here. Instead of maybe if it's instead of getting the biggest offensive weapon, what if it's creating the best defensive system if you want to protect yourself? It's at least an. But one thing's for sure, I'm always going to scrutinize and be of anything tells me I should hate a group of people for any particular reason. Period. Full stop. Because that is not what Jesus taught. I mean, tell me that you're supposed to hate people for disagreeing with you or because they wanted to. Actually, I think Jesus said, pray for your enemies. Bless them who use you. Bless those who curse you and despitefully persecute you. Actually, I think that's what he said. That's curious. How do you if these people really believe what their message is, we can use specifics with Israel, Gaza, or with Ukraine. But let's go back to the neighbor analogy. If you truly believe I intend to kill you and burn down your house, they want your house and they cannot be pacified or reasoned with at all. I mean, let's cross that bridge one at a time. As for myself, I am willing to believe that there are people out there who really just kill me, but I think that's mostly just mental illness than anything else. I've never wanted to kill anyone. If anecdotally, my experience going off of, I'm totally willing to believe that there are groups of people wanting to kill. We've observed that throughout history, and it's today. But all actions are tried in the court of public opinion, and especially stuff that happens on the other side of the world. None of us here in America can actually know what's going on. I certainly can't know exactly what's going on. And what we're viewing, yes, is a hot war in multiple global theaters, whether it's to kill us, so we should kill them. Which just, I don't know. On my mission, the mission matron, the mission president's wife said, she had this quote, and I don't remember where she got the quote, but she said there are only two types of people. There are those we love and those we do not yet understand. I think that is such a powerful phrase. And I don't know where she got it, but I like the at least the rhetoric of people like Lex Friedman. You know, he would be on board with that message of let's turn down the violent rhetoric a notch. Let's turn up love and understanding. When you hear people that are typically warmongers say, "Nope, you can't reason with these people. You can't love these people. You can't talk to these people." I mean, I get it. I'm not one to talk. I've never been personally physically attacked, and all I'm saying is I'm evaluating what's being said according to the teachings of Jesus because I'm a Christian, and I don't see anywhere in there where he says, "You better, if you think someone wants to kill you, you better strike first." Like I just don't see that in his teachings, even as far as him laying down his own life when he had the total capacity to obliterate everyone around him. He could have called down legions of angels from heaven to take everybody out. He didn't. He was meek, he was humble, he was lowly of heart, and the most powerful being to ever walk the earth. The greatest capacity for violence. You get people like, you get people conquering the world like Genghis Khan or whoever. People get material ambitions and they want people get material ambitions and they want to go take over the world. Jesus could have been the most powerful despot the world has ever known, and maybe that was tempting him to abuse his power, or maybe it wasn't effective. It a lot, you know. Anyway, on my soapbox again, but we're supposed to be peacemakers. And I'm not saying there are not global cabals out there to get us. I'm just saying, tell me who they are, and I will go talk. I will at least ask if I can talk to them. And I will investigate. Check it out. Here, show me the receipts. Bring the receipts. That's fine. But I still want to go talk to them. They got abused, destroyed. Yeah, you bet. Absolutely. That's why Jesus said, "Bless those who curse you. Do good to those who despitefully use you and persecute you." Sounds pretty clear to me. We might not like that idea, but it sounds pretty clear to me. Our society, our lives, our reality will only improve if we focus on peace. Well, actually, it would ultimately improve the most if we all just focus on Jesus Christ and his teachings. That, for someone who might struggle with that, a religious persuasion to focus on Jesus Christ, I encourage you to focus on the principles he taught. Focus on peace, mercy, love, forgiveness. Boring because there's nothing sensational. Wait, we all want to say fight, fight, fight. Sounds like this one between Dave Smith and Constantine is going to be pretty wholesome. I'm excited to give it a listen. I enjoy Morgan moderates. He's good at taking control of situations. In my opinion, he's matching the combatants to take control, and sometimes they're what just a referee because he'll help balance. In my opinion, he helps balance the discussion on the imbalanced on the side that needs help. He tries to restore balance to the dialogue. That's what I've observed. I've observed that someone's just getting dunked on, the other person he'll steelman the other person's argument. So I'm not saying he's not biased in the direction of the underdog, which I like. I've always enjoyed, except for one, where he had the two people. It was in the early days of October 7th, that terrible attack. And he had two people. He could not control. There was no way he could control that discussion at all. It was the most 90 minutes or what I do. Literally just shouting for 90 minutes. Oh, that was a rough one. But it sounds like the Constantine one's going to be pretty fruitful. So let's check it out. That's my rambling. I can someday, I don't know if this will develop into positivity mindset. Let's all create together, increasing life. Let's check it out. That's my rambling. Hey, more life to all, less to none. We do evaluate current events through the lens of result in the most all and less to none. What would result in increasing life, right? It's on the matter anyway, for what it's worth. And it's not worth much, perhaps. It's worth a lot, though, in the sense that I possess the most advanced biological specimen ever to grace the planet, which is the human body. And I'm in control of one, or I like to pretend that I am. And as such, I am 1/8 or 9 billionth representative of the planet Earth. So I speak for like an eight billionth of the world, or whatever the global population is. And you do the same. Good job. The more of us that we get, our perception become, and the more ability to create will be. So I invite all those who disagree or agree with me to commit mantra and the mission statement of increasing life, more life to all, less to none. Mantra and the mission statement of increasing life, more life to all. Try to hold people to. If you call someone out and tell me why I should hate them, I want to hear you steelman them, and I want to hear you tell me a few positive things. Anyway, that's all I've got for you. I'm in Moscow right now. Hi, Moscow. Not Russia. Moscow, Idaho. Fun little college. And I will stream again on my way home so I can see Old White Bird. Fun. For now, peace.